All right, we are live on Las Vegas Triathlon Club Facebook page, and we are recording. Ted, it's Friday night. How's it going?
It is Friday night. It's going pretty good. The Friday night before Christmas, right? Or it's next Friday Christmas? I don't even know.
It is. So I don't know if we're doing a podcast on Christmas, but
Well, you never know. We might have a Christmas special. I got my tree.
yeah, there you go. Yeah.
So
Maybe we'll have to share what our tri
uh,
gifts were.
I think that's a really good idea. Except for, yeah, I already bought all mine on Black Friday. So,
Oh, nice, nice.
but yeah, I think that's a great idea. So
Well, this is tough to have this podcast. We're really just a week away from that horrific tragedy with the accident and losing 5 friends and fellow cyclists and triathletes. That's been really hard. It's been a hard week. But at the same time, we know this is a dangerous sport. And at Aaron Ray's vigil, Mark Malone actually gave some good words. He says, we know it's a dangerous sport, but we do accept some of those dangers. Now we want to make it as safe as possible, but we do, those cyclists would like to see us, I'm sure, continue with our exercise and continue to train and sign up for events. And I think that's important. And so I think tonight you and I will talk a little bit about that training and trying to stay on target for some races, because now we see all the Ironman races are sold out.
all 12 North America Ironmans sold out.
Unreal. That's like old times.
And a lot of 70.3s are sold out as well.
Yeah.
I think now it's going to be basically, I think maybe all the 70.3s will sell out this year as well.
Man, do you remember when, I know the year we both did Arizona, I think I went down, I had a volunteer,
Yep.
and then I stood in line to register for the next year. And I think you were able to.
I had 2 computers going.
Yeah.
At the university on like the T1 line, right? So I was like pressing refresh, and all of a sudden, boom! Oh, okay, you got a spot. But it was sold out in like 5 minutes.
No, that's right. And so you're really taking a gamble with that, and
yeah,
and that's that's the old days. You really had to work to get into an event, but then they've opened up so many different, or started so many new races, that it sort of allowed for other ways to get into, and you don't have to get in within the first hour. You register in a couple weeks, or maybe 3 weeks, or even 4. So.
Well, I think there's a lot of pent up demand, because we didn't race this year. Most of us did not race this year. But I also think that there's demand now too, because many people have turned back to endurance sports because gyms were closed.
Yep.
And I know several people that have got back into cycling or got back into running.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not so much swimming, but because of this, and I was like, well, you know what, I'm going to do a triathlon.
Yep.
And I personally know 2 people, like just in my circle, that really kind of were away from it, and they're coming back to it.
That's great.
And because they were doing CrossFit and they were doing all these indoor things that just were very difficult to do, especially during the lockdown time, and still it's difficult to do now. Yeah. So maybe we've seen a little bit of a downward slide especially in North America, especially in the United States, with triathlon numbers in the last 4 or 5 years. USAT's put out some numbers that basically they were down like 5% per year, kind of on average the last 4 or 5 years. But I'm thinking that we're going to see I'm hoping we're going to see a reinvigoration of triathlon in the United States. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
I do too, and yeah, I've seen a lot of people take up cycling, and you can usually tell them, they're older, maybe our age, if that's old. Yeah. And I noticed that I noticed the older vintage bikes. So people are pulling their bikes out of the garage, and a lot of the guys aren't wearing helmets. So
yeah, I've noticed that too. Probably pre-COVID, you'd rarely see someone without a helmet, but now you're right. I'm seeing more people without helmets.
Well, back when I used to train and race back in the 80s, we did not wear helmets regularly.
Yeah.
It was really not until, boy, probably would have been mid 90s, late 90s that the Tour de France started wearing the helmets. And then I think everyone started wearing helmets during training. But, back in the day, I'd just wear my cycling cap or
Yep.
something and never the helmet. So it's changed. So a lot of people are picking the sport back up and they're just doing it the way they used to do it.
Yep.
But now hopefully they'll pick up the helmet.
I'm gonna tell you my funny helmet story. So when I started cycling, my wife had been cycling for years and her whole group, and I was getting back into athletics, and I was running a little bit, and so eventually I was like, okay, I'm going to start cycling, and so I just borrowed a helmet when I did, and borrowed a bike, and then when I bought my first bike, it was I'd probably been biking for a couple months. I decided to buy my first bike. And I remember being at the bike shop, and man, this was a big expense, like a couple $1,000s for a bike.
Yeah.
And I was like, gosh, that's a lot of money. And I get through it all, and I was like, well, I guess I need a helmet too. And I still remember the salesperson. He's like, well, here, you get this one. It's like $60. This one's like $90, and that was all he showed me. And I'm like, whoa, hold on. I'm spending $2,000 on a bike. I want the best helmet I can get, right? Because like this is more important. Like my brain is more important than anything else. I want the safest helmet. And I know we weren't really going to talk about this, but I don't know if you know, but I think it's the University of Virginia or Virginia Tech who put in that MIPS system.
Okay.
They did all the engineering behind it. They actually have a website that they produce the helmets that are the safest. And they started it out with football. And it's actually really an interesting story because obviously when concussions started becoming an issue in football, they were kind of on the forefront of this. Yeah. And they started producing a rating system for helmets. And when they started it, I can't remember the exact numbers, but then it's a 5-star rating, right? And there was like no helmet that received a 5-star rating. But if you received
cycling helmet or
no football was where it started. So no helmets received a 5-star rating. And then, but the couple that received 4-star ratings started to sell really, really well.
Okay.
Right. Because parents and in high school in particular, they they want the best for their kids, especially for the helmet and for safety. And when concussions were and still are such an issue. And then a couple of years later, they received their first 5-star helmet, or they tested their first 5-star helmet, and that became an instant like bestseller. And now it's like almost all the helmets are 4.5 or 5 stars.
Okay.
Right. So they by testing and producing the tests have driven the football industry. Well, they've now started doing those cycling helmets. And so you can go onto there and you can actually see, I'll put this, maybe we can put this in the chat when I'll look it up when we're chatting. You can actually go on and you can see which helmets are the best.
Okay.
And they're not always the most expensive, but they do this multi-impact testing to actually test it. And so now that they're into hockey, they're into lacrosse, they're into all these other sports, snow sports. And so all these sports that have helmets now have these ratings. And so I think it's actually pretty cool that that as a consumer we can go there and see that, but also we can drive the industry.
Yeah.
Right. So if everyone's always just buying the 5-star helmets, guess what? Everyone's going to be producing 5-star helmets. So I think that's a really cool.
I love that. Now, we're talking about back in the 80s. Back in the 80s, I basically had a styrofoam helmet, and it had like a hairnet lycra cover on it, and that's all it was. And they always advertised it's really only good for one crash, and the idea is that it would sort of break up, but that mesh would just hold it on. Fortunately, I never had a crash with that helmet on, but it is amazing how the technology has changed. But we should do a podcast on how to set your chin strap.
No, that is actually a good idea.
Because I know the MIPS is good to help keep the helmet on your head, but I see too many people with chin straps that are not set up correctly. So
yeah, that is true. And I'm more particular, honestly, personally, with my racing helmet. because if it's nice and snug, then it's more aero, you
Yeah.
know?
Well,
So,
and I agree with that, but I also, because we're in aero position, you got to get that chin strap just right so that it's not restricting.
no, for sure. It has to be a happy
Yep,
medium
yep.
between, yeah.
Well,
So
we're off on a different topic than where we were going to start with, but
we
this,
are, but that's okay, right? I think that is actually okay. Because you never, that's the fun thing about our chats is you never know which direction they're going to
yeah,
go.
a little bit. Yeah.
So I put it into the chat. I don't know if people will be able to see it. That website, but it's Virginia Tech. If someone's just Google, just go Virginia Tech bicycle helmet ratings,
Let me put it in the comments.
and it will show up.
Okay. All right, I'll just add it to the Facebook live stream. Okay, so
I know personally, like when I'm looking for a new road helmet for next summer because I need a new white helmet. I broke a helmet, not in a crash this time, but I'm looking for a new one, and I'm like, that's where I'm going. Like I'm next spring when spring rolls around and I'm ready to purchase a new white helmet. I'm going to go there, and whatever one is rated the highest, that's a road helmet, I'm going to buy.
Well, it is interesting to see the evolution of helmets over time, and if you look at pictures in Kona, which obviously those are easy pictures to find. 10 years ago, the helmets were for racing were very long-tailed, but really the last few years, we're really gone to either no tail or short tail. So,
well, even look at the picture behind you. I mean, I see this picture behind
that's
you all
right.
the time because I'm always chatting with you.
Yeah.
It's a long tail helmet.
That's a classic helmet. Yeah, that was one of the most expensive ones back then. So now you won't find anyone wearing that.
Well, it's interesting. Some track athletes are still track cyclists are still wearing the long tail.
No one in triathlon. Yeah,
right.
That's right.
You're right. Yeah.
But track totally different. You've got much more of a controlled environment, and you can do more true aerodynamic equipment at that point. So
yeah, for sure.
Well, hey, let's switch gears and go where we were going before, where people are coming back into training, and 2021 we have all these sold out races. Well, it's December, and even though we're in the Southwest, there is a tendency to maybe take that time off. I know we've talked about off season.
Yep.
Let's talk about, and you came up with this topic, consistent training.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's important to understand that off season doesn't mean off.
Yeah.
Right. I think that oftentimes athletes say, well, it's December, January, I'm taking a break.
Yep.
And they just pull the plug completely.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that is in their best interest, because I do think that that would lead to potentially more injuries down the road, and then also decreases in performance. Mm-hmm. The amount of fitness you could lose in 2 months or even 1 month is quite significant. So I am an advocate for consistency in training, and having maybe at this time of year still just maybe switching it around. Like I usually go 3 weeks hard, 1 week easy. Mm-hmm. during most of the year. Maybe now you go 2-2 or go 1-3, but it's still like my training load, or what I'd advocate for an off season would be maybe decrease your training load to 75% or 70%, and you still allow your body to recover, but you don't lose nearly as much. And if anything, you're going to lose maybe some of the top end stuff, mm-hmm. but you're going to still maintain that aerobic fitness. And aerobic fitness is quite different than like neuromuscular fitness. Mm-hmm. So I do think that training consistency is super important. Now that being said, it doesn't mean you have to do swim, bike, and run. Right. Your consistent training could be on Sunday, instead of your 4-hour bike ride, you go for a 4-hour hike.
Yeah, that's right.
It's aerobic. It's mm-hmm. You're using different muscles. You're doing different things. Mm-hmm. We did in November. What was it? We call it Multi-Sport November.
Yeah,
we were advocating doing something different. So it doesn't necessarily have to be swim, bike, and run. But I think that consistency will always, and especially in what we're doing, it will rule the day. We started this whole conversation talking about Ironman.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Well, John, I'm going to ask you this: like, when you are preparing for an Ironman and you're on your biggest weeks, how many hours per week are you training?
Oh, well, I'm embarrassed to say, but
No, you shouldn't be, because I'm going to be the same. My answer is going to be exactly the same.
I'm going to be, I'll, as I peak out, I'm 20 to 30 hours.
Yeah.
Consistently, I try to hit 20 to 30 hours for probably about, 4 weeks, if not even a little bit longer. I really try to work up to that,
Yep.
and then try to sustain that. So,
Because you're talking about a race day on a good day for you in the tens, right?
yeah.
So you're talking about, being at an aerobic level for 10 hours.
Mm-hmm.
It takes an awful lot to get there.
Yeah.
So let's break that down. Let's say, you want to get to that 20, let's say conservatively 20 hours a week for the average person that wants to do well at an Ironman.
Yeah.
Okay. Or even for me, I mostly do half Ironmans. My peaks are getting to low to mid 20s
Right.
for hours per week. And if we really think about in training, one of the things that I'm a big advocate of is monitoring your ramp rate. And we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
So how much increase in volume and intensity actually, you have per week, per month, per 2 months, per 3 months. And we know that if we keep our ramp rate consistent as we're building in particular, we don't get injured, or we have a lot less chance of being injured.
So
go ahead.
Let's jump back just a little bit, because this is really good information, and I want to make sure we're all on the same page. So the bottom line with training is you manipulate 4 things: frequency, intensity, time that you're exercising, and mode, or the type of exercise you do. And that's your training. Every training program is built around manipulating those 4 elements.
Yep.
Where the mode would be specificity, or if you want to be a good runner, you got to run, you got to bike, you got to bike, and so forth. But what you're talking about is that more exclusive to Training Peaks, the ramp rate, or no?
Nope. So this is actually really getting into, it's really big right now in sports medicine in general.
Mm-hmm.
The Journal of Athletic Training just came up in November, I think, and a whole article, or a whole issue talking about load management.
Mm-hmm.
So load management right now in sports medicine is like the big topic.
Yep.
And because really, for years in sports medicine, we've been talking about injury prevention.
Right.
But really, we really weren't doing a good job of it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But if we control the load and build load mathematically and scientifically and consistently, and control how much load we gain per week, per month, per year, the research that was starting to come out is showing we really can prevent injury.
Yeah.
We talked about this maybe a month and a half ago or so about the beer mug and filling the beer mug,
right,
and basically filling out training volume, intensity, time, whatever you want to put it, and doing it in a way that we slowly progress and we build up resiliency. And that's a big term, resiliency, right? Because the truth of the matter is that most of us are not as resilient as we would like to be, right? And if we train more than we've built our resiliency, we will get injured.
Yeah. Well, that's the Hans Selye model that we talked about in a previous podcast.
Exactly.
You have to expose yourself to stress and then let your body adapt. And if you don't, you end up in an injured state. And so I love the term load, because that combines those 4 elements: frequency, intensity, time, and mode.
Yep.
Because load has to account for all of those. But we got to come up with the right algorithm. I know, different programs, Garmin has one, Training Peaks has another, and
well, I think the training scoring stress one is probably the most ubiquitous, even though it's a Garmin thing. It was built through, correct me if I'm wrong, like Andy Kogan and that group in the early 90s when they started the Training with the Power Meter book and all that. I think that that's where TSS started. And then Training Peaks bought it, but then and Garmin licenses it, so you can get it on Garmin as well. And I think that obviously Garmin is probably the biggest player in the metrics game, the watches and the bike computers. But there are very simple ways you could do this, right? All you have to do is look at those 4 things you talked about. Actually, and let's even take out the mode, right?
Yep.
Because stress is stress. Like you can develop stress swimming, you can develop it biking, you can develop it running. You're right that you need some specificity, but ultimately, I think that load is load, and you can easily do it, right? You could do this. You can make your own little spreadsheet for this, where you looked at how many hours was that session, or how many minutes was that session, and RPE. How difficult was it?
Yeah. And
you can create your own load schedule right there, right? If let's say you did 90 minutes and it was at a 5 out of 10, you could say that's a score of 450. You just take it like that, and you could put that into an Excel sheet and just look at it day to day to day to day to day, week to week to week to week. Am I building load over time? Do I have weeks where I go from, I don't know, whatever table you want to use, 2,000 to 4,000, back down to 2,000? Well, that 4,000, you were putting yourself at risk because you were asking your body to do more than it was prepared to do. Okay. And the problem is when we start back to training or we get into training, oftentimes because we haven't basically beat the heck out of ourselves, you feel really good, right? And maybe you're sore, but you're still like, oh, I could do more. I could do more. I could do more. And before long, though, your body starts to get, basically micro damage, and then you change we change movement patterns, we change how we run, we change how we swim, we maybe change a position on our bicycle, all these things, and then ultimately we get injured. Yep. And we're going to do, I promise this, in the spring, we're going to do, and as winter rolls along, do some more stuff on injury and injury prevention. But this is what we're seeing in sports medicine. The cornerstone of injury prevention is load management, and load management through consistency of training. Yeah. So I've been rambling for a long time, but.
Well, and I'm a big advocate for consistency of training. I'll take that over anything. And, training day in and day out is for endurance performance is really a key element to your training program, because it doesn't help you get any better if you do a great hard workout, but now you have to take 2 or 3 days off. You really need to find how to do consistent training. Yes, you need time off, you need recovery, but consistent training is really a key to be healthy and to do well.
So there's some other interesting papers on this too. There was one that was done, I think it was for the Rio Olympics, and they looked at medal winners versus non-medal winners, and they did it was retrospective, so who knows how good it is. But they calculated out how many days in the year leading up to the Olympics someone was sick, not injured, sick, and missed training because of sickness. Yep. And no surprise, the people that were sick less won more medals. Yep. When everything else was equalized, right? And you could look at it, if you've missed 20 days of training this year because of sickness. That other person had 20 extra days of training. They built up more resiliency, they built up more load, they built up more fitness. And that's not, and these are like Olympic level athletes. They don't want to take days off. Right. But they were forced to because of illness. So it's interesting, in the COVID world, right? We're learning an awful lot about disease transmission. Yeah, right. Right. And prevention of illness. I just think that, as an endurance athlete, we should always be trying to practice all of these things, like, washing your hands, not sharing water bottles, not sharing forks with people, kind of living that, if someone is sick around you, like stay away from them.
Yep.
Uh,
Well, usually you only go into that mode about 2 weeks before your Ironman race, and then you're ultra, careful. And
yeah,
now we're just extending that 2 weeks out to every day.
yeah, exactly. It's it is interesting that can affect us, right? And most people say, well, you're going to get sick, you're going to get sick. Well, I think that's not necessarily true. Like, there are things that ultimately we can do
Mm-hmm.
to prevent being sick. And once again, we're learning a lot about that. And then there are things we can do. This isn't even talking about injury yet. There's things that we can do to prevent injury that also play a big role in this, right? John, you've been relatively injury-free since I've known you. Relatively.
Yeah, no, I have. I mean, the setbacks I have are really related to my rheumatoid arthritis more so
Right.
than an injury. And if I can manage my RA, I'm doing fine. But that's the trick is managing that. But yeah, I haven't really had a serious injury. I've had those calf problems, but I really attribute that to my rheumatoid arthritis. And even though it's manifesting itself in the calf, it's really happening at the joint, and then the calf is just suffering the consequence of the joint having a problem. So
Yeah, and I, at least the last 2 years or year and a half, I've been relatively injury-free, except for a bike crash, which I don't attribute to overtraining. I attribute that to just plain stupidity. But but I really became a student of load management probably, well, when I was injured last.
yeah,
And I started looking. One nice thing about keeping good data,
yeah,
right, is I started to kind of come to this idea, like, when my load was too high for too long,
yeah.
or I had my ramp rates, so how quickly I was trying to gain load, were too steep, I got injured.
Well, that's a really great point, because that's how I discovered what I could tolerate as well. Is in my log, I would log, even back in the 80s, my analog version of a train log, I would write down the days that I had a knee problem or an ankle problem or this or that or a shoulder. And then over time, I was able to go back and look at my training program, and I could see where those injuries were starting to occur. They were becoming very frequent or very predictable in terms of when I started training to when I would see that first injury to when I would see the next injury and so forth. And I realized I needed to, not have these big fluctuations in my training program. And since then it's been going good.
So let's just think about a model here. So let's say, when's your first Ironman this year?
When's my Coeur d'Alene, when is Coeur d'Alene? Is it June?
I don't know. June. I think it is June. So let's say 6 months from now.
Yep.
Right. If by chance you had zero fitness right now, which you do not have zero fitness, but if you had zero fitness and you wanted to get to a point where, let's say 2 or 3 weeks from it, you're training 25 hours a week, that's not much time
No, right.
to build. Because we're looking at models now that are showing maybe the number we want to be at is 4% increase per week.
Mm-hmm.
That's a long road.
It is.
And how many people do that though? They sign up, oh, I got 6 months.
Yeah.
Or I got 5 months. I got 4 months.
Yeah.
And then that is what, in my mind, that is what creates problems, right?
Mm-hmm.
And but if you start out, let's say, I don't know, hypothetically, you want to be at 100 by the time you race. Just you want to be 100.
Yep.
And you start out at 70.
Mm-hmm.
Then adding 4% per week when you really want to start to build is completely within the realms of possibility.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And even it's not even just all about building anymore. It's about being at that level for a while and creating more resilience and building more resilience.
Yeah.
But I think we also run into the situation of, in general, just like letting things get in our way, letting life get in the way.
Mm-hmm.
And and I get it. Like, life is tough and life has, challenges, and but I also think that it doesn't always have to be as hard as we think it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, um, at least when we pre-COVID time, it was not uncommon for me at lunch at work to go for a half-hour run.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
just sneak it in twice a week, an
Yep.
extra half hour, an extra half hour.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, those little extra half hours add up.
Over time. And, that's how I really started to gain some of my bike fitness back when I started getting back into racing back in 2007. I started commuting,
Yep.
and there's only 10 miles each way, but it was 10 miles each way every day. And
Yeah, think about if you did that 5 days a week,
yeah,
and not the 20, that's 100 miles.
yeah, yeah. And it added up. And then I would do some longer stuff on the weekends. And I did that for years, and only really recently, and you've actually inspired me to do this, is I started doing more longer routes to and from work. And
Yeah.
now all of a sudden I took my consistent training, but I was in a position that I've been doing that for 10 years.
Yeah.
And be able to start increasing the duration of exercise. So now you can do it safely. But I had that background of consistency, which is such a key.
Yeah.
It was only 10 miles, 30, 40 minutes, that it doesn't seem like a lot. And in essence, it isn't, but you add that up over time and it really does matter.
Yeah, and I think that some people like maybe not like the whole idea of commuting.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I gotta be honest with you, I was so sneaky I get so sneaky with some of the stuff that I do.
Mm-hmm.
As far as there's a lot of times my wife works downtown.
Yeah.
That I would have her drop me off at her office, and I'd run from there to work.
Yeah.
And after work, run back downtown and go home with her.
Ah,
Right. So, and it's not far from downtown to UNLV.
right.
It's only like a half hour run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But once again, I was sneaking in an
Yep.
extra half hour each way. Plus, I got to spend time with my wife, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes that's an issue. It's like, especially with spouses and families. Oh, you're always training. You don't have time for me. Well, then we're 20 minutes in the commute together, and we can talk and chat. And
Mm-hmm.
how was your day? What do you got going on today? So I mean, it was and literally just sneaky little ways to gain, to make things work in your schedule.
Well, and that's the key, is that you're able to do consistent exercise because it's part of your routine and it doesn't penalize your routine. And there's too many roadblocks sometimes that people put up to exercise, and they got to go here or they got to go there to do their exercise. And it just has to be easy to access.
The one other thing I wanted to add in with consistency of training is something called anchoring. And what I call it, what I refer to anchoring, I refer to like things that are they're always going to happen every week. And research once again shows that if you have some anchors of things that on Tuesday night you're going to do this. So for me, Tuesday and Thursday night is my swim group.
Mm-hmm.
And every Tuesday, every Thursday, and every Saturday morning, the swim group is swimming. So that's an anchor for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like it takes an awful lot for me not to do those. And once it becomes your routine, it's just like, like for example, like my parents know, well, don't call on Tuesday or Thursday night because we're going to be swimming, right? And so that is a really good anchor for me. And then I think you alluded to like a long ride on the weekend.
Yep.
It's also like Sunday is a long ride day always. And that's an anchor.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, like I build out other things, but those are the things that pretty much I'm always going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And when we look at the research into consistency, not just in sports, but consistency in life, it's having these anchors.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at it almost like that's like just as same as going to work. On Monday morning, we go to work. On Tuesday night, we have the swimming.
No, I like that. I like that phrasing and mindset. I would also add that an anchor for me is Monday's my day off.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, I know that about you.
Yeah.
Like seriously, since I've known that, not really known you, but since we've been talking a lot of triathlon 4 or 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago now, I don't know, longer probably now. I know that John goes to Capriati's on Monday, and that's his day off.
That's right. Yeah.
right? And that's an anchor for you,
Yep.
right?
Mhm.
Like I'm sure like on those longer, hard days on a Sunday, you're thinking, oh, tomorrow's my day off,
That's right.
right?
Yep.
And come Tuesday, when you get back at it, you're like, oh, I'm fresh because I had my day off,
Yep.
right?
That's right.
I was actually going to mention that I think that having a day off that's consistent is a good anchor,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like I like Fridays to be my day off.
Yep.
And because then I get prepared for like a long run on a Saturday, a swim on a Saturday, and a long bike on Sunday.
Yep.
But that's another, once again, one of my anchor points,
Yep.
right? And I think that when we do build consistency, I think that is important, especially for those of us that are self-coached.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. And yeah, and then take advantage of those anchors. In this case, the anchor being a day off, because then you can turn around and do other things. And that's how Laura and I started our Monday coffee house, is because, well, Monday's our day off. Let's go. We don't have to stress about trying to get a workout in or trying to fit this in here and there. It's just our day off. So now we can easily go and do something else. And far too often, endurance athletes uh, don't always have the best relationships because you're focused too much on getting your exercise in. But you can build it into your routine and still have a good relationship.
So one of the other little secret things I do for consistent training is oftentimes I just keep a pair of running shoes and some shorts in my wife's car.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So if we're out somewhere doing something, we're gonna run to Costco I'm like, okay, I'll go with you and I'll hang out, do what we gotta do, and then I'll run home.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Right. And by the time she gets home and she gets settled, where I'm at the door.
Yep.
Right. Because it might just be a half hour. It might be 20 minutes. But I'm notorious for like trying to figure out. I'm looking at I'm in the car looking at my map. I'm like, okay, there's a park right here. Right here, drop me off. And once again, I'm not, because I treasure my relationship with my wife, and I know you do too. And I don't want to let it, like, triathlon training be a negative.
Yeah.
And once again, I'm trying to fit it into my life,
mm-hmm.
rather than let my life revolve around it.
Oh, that's great. I love it. Now, I guess another trick for me for consistency is, if I can only get a 2-mile run in, I'll do a 2-mile run, but I don't change my intensity. I don't say, oh, I'm only doing 2 miles.
Sorry.
There he is. I know that's not Zora. So last time I thought it was Zora. So
no, that was definitely Cosmo.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cosmo's got to yell at least once.
I guess where I was going was that I don't say, oh, it's only 2 miles, therefore I'm going to make this a higher intensity run, because that's not the intent. The intent is just to stay consistent.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of people fall into that. Oh, I was scheduled to do 2 hours or 3 hours.
Mm-hmm.
I only got an hour, so I'm going to hammer myself for an hour. And you've completely changed what you were doing. And the truth of the matter is, 1 hour really, really hard, the actual load on your body is probably more significant than the 3 hours easy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think for triathlon, maintaining aerobic fitness is the key, especially in the off season. So you can swim, bike, and run and do that. Then as you approach the season, now you need to make sure that you have your specificity for each of those sports. But this time of year, you can really rotate those around and recover, take a break, but also stay consistent with your training. But it doesn't have to mean consistent running, consistent biking, consistent swimming. You can really mix it up.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And if you look at and you talk to people that are consistently doing well in triathlon, they have the same story.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's no 6 month got into triathlon, I'm going to be on the podium of a 70.3.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen. It's
right.
It's years of consistency.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the other thing. I think that oftentimes that athletes want to think of this as like a short-term gain.
Mm-hmm.
Endurance sports is a long-term game.
Yeah.
Right? You're looking at I really think to be consistently good, it's a 5-year thing.
Yeah, right.
So
Yeah, let's see. I started back in '85, but then I took a break, raised our kids, and then got back into it around 2007. So it's amazing going, my second career in triathlon is already 13 years long. So,
yeah, and I started now, I think it's not 11 or 12 years ago. And, I often, and I'm sure you run into the same thing. People ask, oh, how did you get fast?
yeah, yeah.
What did you, and I'm like, honestly, the right answer is, well, we were probably somewhat genetically gifted.
Mm-hmm.
And number two, train consistently.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this many times, and don't train too hard too often.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there's people that I spend a lot of time with and consult with, and my biggest issue in consulting with people is always getting them to train consistently and getting them to train not too hard.
Mm-hmm.
Continually fighting a battle to get people to slow down.
Yeah.
Because they want to be on the podium their first year.
Yeah. Right.
And at a local race, that's completely possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A 70.3 or an Ironman with 2,000 people in it,
Mm-hmm.
it's probably not.
No.
I hate to say it's probably not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to have realistic expectations for ourselves and for those that we are mentoring and that we're
Mm-hmm.
giving advice to.
Yeah, no, spot on. And my number one advice when someone wants to get faster, it is consistency. That's the advice I almost always give. Is it starts there, because if you can't do it consistently, it breaks down eventually.
Yeah, I've looked at some people's training logs and seen things where like, well, why'd you have a 2-week break here?
Mm-hmm.
Another 2-week break.
Yeah.
In 1 week here. And so in the last like 3 months, they took 5 weeks off, like off.
Yeah.
And and then every time they start back up, it's difficult.
All right. So now you talked training log. I got to ask you. Strava has the end of the year stats out. Do you know what your elevation for the year was?
Okay, I'm gonna have you guess.
Oh, well,
my elevation was knowing that I trained for an Everest thing and did an Everest thing.
Let me see if I can bring mine up first, because I'll go off of mine, because I asked you, but I don't know mine off the top of my head. But yeah, your Everest train was 27.
I'm pretty sure I know almost exactly where I'm at, because I just hit my year-end goal for my distance, and I wanted to look at that. But I'll look at mine too. But okay, so yeah, I'll have you guess.
All right, so where is that? Where is the year-end total?
You can just go into your profile,
and
it'll give you all your stuff without even going into that.
Yeah, that's a pretty neat little video feature that Strava had this year, and it's amazing how they link the pictures to.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
All right, so okay, so 2020.
Yep.
All right, I had elevation gain of 369,531 feet.
Cosmo.
So I was thinking you were going to be over 500,000.
Yeah.
How much over?
643,000.
Oh, wow.
And I still got how many days? I got like 12, 13 days left.
Yeah.
I'm gonna, well, definitely, yeah, I got a lot more climbing to still do this year. So, but yeah, so that's definitely my biggest year ever of climbing.
Yeah.
But I purposely did a ton to get ready for that Everest.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a lot of elevation. Let me ask you what your distance was.
Distance was 7,536 miles.
That's just cycling?
Yep.
So Mine is 9,000
That's great.
9,080 miles.
Mm-hmm.
And then, how about running?
Running, you're gonna totally top me out here. 2020 distance. Oh, I'm 6 miles short of 1,000 miles.
See, you're actually ahead of me on that one.
No.
Yeah, because most of the summer I didn't really run that much because I was trying to get those
Yeah,
altitude in
that's
cycling.
true. Yeah, right.
So my goal for the year, because I set my goals for the year, it was to do 9,000 miles biking, which I just hit this week, and was to do 1,000 miles running, and I am 977, so I'm 20
Oh.
feet away, and I will make it. It's I actually have a 10 mile or 11 mile run in me tomorrow, so
Okay. Well, see, I haven't run in probably about 4 weeks, so I better get that 6 miles in to get over
you got to
1,000.
get it.
Yeah.
So then, because my goal was to have a 10,000 mile year when I added my biking and my.
All right. Swimming.
Okay. I think you're gonna give me on this one. I don't know, because I had I had the shoulder injury.
Yeah.
But I didn't swim much in the beginning. This was actually my least swimming year ever. So, and plus with COVID, all the pools were closed.
Right.
So I had 220,000
Oh, that's good.
yards.
Yeah. I was 369,252 yards.
How many? 369,000.
369,000. Well,
I'm sorry. Hang on a second. I gotta take care of my dog here.
I almost matched my elevation on my bike and my swimming. That's interesting.
But that would be a good stat, right? Because actually, last year I think I had like 500,000 yards swimming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
that's pretty hard.
That would have been pretty close to my. Yeah, that'd be a good thing, right? Is like, can you match your swimming yardage to your feet climbed biking?
Mm-hmm.
That'd actually be an interesting one to look at over the years.
Yeah, I signed up for a U.S. Masters swimming event once when it was to swim 500,000 in the year, and I started out just doing my normal swims, and then all of a sudden I started doing the math. I'm like, oh my gosh, I really need to pick it up here, and so I had to swim basically 3,500 yards every day. Yeah, and then add in some 5,000 yard swims too, to be able to get to the 500,000. So that was a lot.
Yeah, 500,000 is a lot. When I got over 500,000, it was literally just the 3 times a week and probably 3,500 at average every time. Now, this year I've actually tried to do as much as swimming as we've had, and that was actually an issue, right? I really didn't swim much, honestly, until I don't know. When did the pools reopen again? July?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because I was injured in the beginning, and then I got a few lake swims in during COVID and a few ocean swims in, but not much. So yeah, it was a tough year for swimming for everybody. So I've been trying to be really careful about load management because I've had shoulder issues swimming, and right now, kind of for me, I don't really want to even have a session over 3,000.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely if I'm doing intensity, it's even shorter than that. Because once again, I'm trying to manage the load. Like cardiovascularly, could I go swim 5,000? Sure, I could. But my shoulder wouldn't be very happy with that, and I'd get injured. And
that's right.
And that's kind of what we're getting back to. Now, the one exception I think to the load management and to the prevention of injury is probably the long bike ride.
Mm-hmm.
Long, slow bike ride.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you go 2, 3, 4 hours and you're in zone 1, you're not probably going to get injured.
Right.
So that's also a little trick, right? You can build up load with relatively safely on a bike.
Yeah.
With long, slow. And that's one thing that I always advocate for people is like, what, on your long, slow bike day, if Sunday's your long, slow day, as long as you stay in that zone 1, low zone 2, go as long as you want.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And you could tell if you went too hard by, and I always tell people too, is like, if you finish your ride and you're devastated, like you can do nothing else that day.
Yeah.
you went too hard. You got out of your zone 1, low zone 2.
Right. That's right.
But I think that's a trick to consistency as well as is the long slow bike ride.
Hmm. No, I think you're spot on with that. That long, I love the long ride.
Me too.
Yeah, but it's not a ride that I go out to try to kill,
Mhm.
and I just enjoy it. It's nice to be out there, and we've got some
Yeah,
beautiful places to ride here.
I'm the same. Like I love just getting out, and I'm I'm such a weird creature. Like I love to see new things. So I love new
Hmm.
routes, and I love new, like, that keeps me going. Like just
Yeah,
seeing things. And I've done a lot of COVIDcations this
yeah,
year,
yeah. You did.
and but that kind of keeps me going too. Is like to find new places, even in Las Vegas.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, and see, and that's where we're different. I love my routine.
but it's weird, right? I love my swim routine. I love my anchors.
Yeah,
But for my long bike ride in particular,
yeah.
I really do like to see something new, like,
Uh,
or go somewhere different. Like, okay, instead of going, the best thing ever this year was Potosi opened.
hmm.
I'm like, oh yes, my old route. Like it adds a little bit of variety.
Yeah,
Like,
right, right.
I really like that. But like on my short rides, midweek ride, I would do the same ride often,
Yeah,
and even
yeah,
like commuting, it's the
yeah.
same. But I think for the 4 or 5 hours, I need more of a mental
Hmm.
stimulus, maybe.
Yeah. Well, and I have a handful of long rides that I like to do,
Yeah.
and my wife is much more the explorer, and there's times that I'll do that with her, but I'm not the explorer. I like to say, okay, I know what I'm doing, I know where I'm going, and which reminds me, I'm gonna have to make a trip up to Coeur d'Alene to get on that course, or do it on Ruby or some platform to practice that, because I think that speaks to my comfort zone in a race is having that.
Have you not done Coeur d'Alene before? You not been up there?
I've been there, but not for racing.
Okay.
And so but the course is not out yet either. So
There's not that many options there though. Like I raced the 70.3 there, and I actually did go up before to train it.
hmm.
My wife actually had to work up there for
Hmm.
like 3 or 4 days, so I went with her, and I obviously rode the course and rode the area. But there's not a lot of options for them.
Yeah, right, right, right.
But yeah, actually I love Coeur d'Alene.
Yeah,
I'd
it's
go
a
up there to train for sure.
beautiful area. I'm seeing Matt Olson. He put in 100K in the comment. I'm wondering, is that swimming or bike? That's got to be swimming. For when we were
Yeah,
talking
I
about the
actually
product.
think so. For those of you, obviously we know Matt. He doesn't really enjoy swimming,
Yeah.
so I could see that.
And Max Jones had a comment about your mustache.
It's nice,
So
isn't it?
your mustache is really going good there. I don't see the comment now, but it was there. Yeah. So
Yeah.
what do you got going on this weekend?
So I'm in Tucson,
Hmm.
and so I am going to do a nice awesome training stuff here. So I'm going to do just a short bike ride tomorrow, and then a 10 or 11 mile run, and then
Hmm.
on Sunday, there's so many options. I don't know.
Hmm.
Long bike ride. I did Mount Lemmon yesterday for the first time ever. So for
Nice.
those of you, obviously on our Strava page, I can see the club members that have done it. There's only been a few. If you get the opportunity, come down to Tucson and ride Mount Lemmon. It
Yeah.
is spectacular.
Yeah.
It's not as hard as Mount Charleston is harder.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
actually
interesting.
it's significantly harder because Mount Lemmon averages like 4.5-5%.
Oh, interesting. I thought that was quite a different ride than Charleston. So.
Like most of the ride, I was in the big chain ring in the front.
Hmm.
Um, but it's long. It's 21 miles of climbing.
Yeah.
At like 4 or 5%. But yeah,
Okay.
I'm a big advocate of it.
Mm.
I'll be doing it again in the next couple days
Oh,
for sure.
yeah.
So, how about you? What do you got going on this weekend?
I am going to meet up with Team Bad Decision tomorrow
Oh, yes.
and do some biking up on the north side of town. So they're going to show me some routes up there. So,
Yeah.
um,
There's,
uh,
I love riding north side of Las Vegas.
yeah.
There's some really good riding up there because there's those areas that are kind of, what do they call them? Equestrian areas,
Oh,
basically,
yeah.
where
Okay.
where
Okay.
people are allowed to have horses and
Hmm.
there's no traffic lights and
Okay.
there's some good riding there. Yeah, and you gonna go maybe do the gun range?
I don't know. Yeah, I think he's taking us on the base. So,
Oh, on the base too. Okay,
uh,
good.
uh,
Yeah. Yeah, that's gonna be that'll be good. Yeah.
yeah,
Awesome.
I have not been on my bike outside for over a month. So,
No, that's a shame.
yeah, it is. But I've been using my indoor bike time to watch vintage trailer restore instructional videos.
That's right.
So I had to get that. I had to, increase my knowledge base there. So
Yeah.
uh,
Awesome.
it's
All right.
going.
Well, that was a great talk tonight. I definitely I enjoyed it for sure,
Yeah,
and it brightened my day
yeah.
as it always does. Um, if we don't talk before Christmas, Merry Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, everybody, and happy to you.
Yeah, and you never know, we may have a Christmas special next week.
That's right. Yeah. Well, depends on what we get for Christmas. Then maybe we'll.
Exactly, because the truth is in this world of COVID, my wife and myself and Cosmo, who now you've all heard many times tonight, it's just going to be the three of us.
Yeah,
We're
that's
not
good.
we're not we're not going to be spreading any germs anywhere except for the three of
No,
us.
well, just actually, both my boys will be over, but
Yeah.
no, that's it. So, hey,
All
good
right.
talking.
Okay. Talk to you later.
All right, be
Bye-bye.
safe, have fun.
Okay. Bye bye.